February 2nd, 1945, 0340 hours, Mauthausen concentration camp, Upper Austria. The searchlight sweeps across the quarry wall in a slow predatory arc, and Captain Alexei Sisoyev presses himself flat against the frozen granite. His breath comes in shallow gasps that fog the air, each exhalation a small betrayal that could get him killed. 30 feet below, guard dogs bark in the darkness, their handlers' voices carrying sharp and guttural across the Wiener Graben stoneworks. Sisoyev's fingers find purchase in a crack between blocks, edges sharp enough to cut through the thin fabric wrapped around his hands. He is wearing a dead man's clothes, striped prison uniform beneath a stolen civilian coat, and his body weighs perhaps 110 pounds, down from the 165 he carried when the Gestapo threw him into Mauthausen 7 months ago. 7 months of watching men die in the quarry, 7 months of pretending to be just another Soviet prisoner of war, just another number tattooed on skeletal flesh. But Sisoyev isn't just another prisoner. Before his capture in Hungary, he was a senior lieutenant in SMERSH, Soviet military counterintelligence, operating behind German lines. The Gestapo never broke him during interrogation. They never learned what he was. And now, climbing the outer wall of one of the Reich's most brutal camps, he carries something more valuable than his own life. He knows what the Germans are building in the tunnels beneath him. The searchlight passes. Sisoyev moves. His left foot finds the next ledge, a granite outcropping, worn smooth by rain. The wall is 20 feet high here, topped with electrified wire that hums with 380 volts. He's studied the patrol patterns for 6 weeks, memorized the 2-minute gap when the searchlight operator changes position and the wire current cycles off for maintenance. 2 minutes. He has 2 minutes starting now. Sisoyev pulls himself up the final 5 feet. His arms are trembling. Malnutrition has stolen the strength from muscles that once hauled him through Stalingrad's ruins. At the top, he uses the stolen coat to cover the wire, pressing down slowly, testing. No spark, no current. He rolls over the barrier and drops into the darkness on the other side. The impact drives the breath from his lungs. He lies still in frozen mud, listening. No alarm, no dogs yet. Just the distant industrial thunder that never stops in Mauthausen's underground. The sound that's haunted his sleep for 7 months. The sound of Germany's future being hammered into existence by slave labour. 300 yards away, through forest that's been cleared of undergrowth by work details, the Danube River flows black and swift. Sisoyev runs toward it with the shambling gait of a man whose feet are wrapped in rags, whose toes are black with frostbite, whose body is fueled by nothing but desperation and duty. Behind him, a whistle shrieks. The dogs have found his scent. He reaches the riverbank and doesn't hesitate. The Danube in February is liquid death, 36 degrees Fahrenheit, moving fast enough to smash a man against rocks or drag him under. Sisoyev wades in until the current takes him. The cold is instant and absolute, a physical force that squeezes his chest and sets his teeth chattering so violently he fears they'll shatter. He lets the river carry him downstream, away from the searchlights that now probe the forest, away from the barking that grows fainter with each second. Half a mile downstream, he drags himself onto the far bank. His body is shutting down, hypothermia claiming his extremities, his core temperature dropping toward the point of no return. But he's alive, he's free. And somewhere in the frozen Austrian night, 200 miles east, Soviet forces are pushing toward Vienna. Sisoyev forces himself to his feet and begins walking. What drives him forward through that night and the nights that follow isn't the simple instinct for survival. It's the weight of what he's witnessed in Mauthausen's underground factories, the secrets he memorized while pretending to be just another half-dead prisoner hauling stones. In those tunnels, lit by harsh electric bulbs and echoing with the screams of dying men, Sisoyev watched the future take shape. He saw rockets, not the Katyushas he'd known on the Eastern Front, those simple rail-launched weapons that screamed and exploded. These were different. Massive cylinders, 46 feet long, sleek and terrible, mounted on mobile launchers. He watched engineers, some wearing SS insignia, others in civilian suits, adjusting gyroscopes and fuel pumps. He heard them call the weapons Vergeltungswaffe 2, Vengeance Weapon 2, V2, V. He saw jet aircraft components being assembled in adjacent caverns, swept wing designs, unlike anything in the Soviet Air Force inventory. He overheard conversations between German scientists, their voices arrogant with confidence, even as the Reich crumbled around them. They spoke of speeds exceeding 500 miles per hour, of rockets that could strike targets 200 miles away, of weapons that would turn the tide if only production could be increased. Sisoyev had memorized it all. Dimensions, fuel mixtures, something called liquid oxygen and ethanol. Guidance systems using gyroscopes, more sophisticated than anything Soviet technology possessed. Production numbers, 300 V2s per month at peak capacity, assembled by prisoners who died at a rate of 1 for every 6 rockets completed. And he'd memorized the names: Dr. Wernher von Braun, chief designer; General Walter Dornberger, military commander of the rocket program; Professor Ernst Stuhlinger, guidance systems; dozens more, a constellation of German scientific talent focused on weapons a generation ahead of their time. The intelligence is fragmentary, incomplete, filtered through the understanding of a soldier trained in counterintelligence, not engineering. But it's real, and it's more than Moscow knows. By February 5th, Sisoyev has covered 30 miles, moving only at night, hiding in barns and forests during daylight. He's stolen bread from a farmhouse, melted snow for water, and traded his prison uniform for clothes pulled from a scarecrow. His feet are infected, his body racked with fever, but he keeps moving east, toward the sound of artillery that grows louder each night. February 11th, 1945, 1520 hours, Soviet forward positions, 15 kilometers west of Bratislava. The Red Army sentry brings his PPSH-41 submachine gun to bear before he even processes what he's seeing. A scarecrow figure stumbling through the snow, hands raised, words tumbling out in Russian that sounds too educated, too precise for a refugee. Major Dmitry Volkov, the battalion intelligence officer, arrives within minutes, his greatcoat dusted with snow, his eyes narrowed with the permanent suspicion that keeps NKVD officers alive. Name and unit, Volkov snaps, circling Sisoyev like a predator assessing prey. Captain Alexei Mikhailovich Sisoyev, SMERSH, attached to 2nd Ukrainian Front Intelligence Operations. Sisoyev's voice is hoarse, each word costing him effort, but his eyes are clear. Alert, I need immediate transport to front headquarters. I'm carrying priority intelligence regarding German advanced weapons development. Volkov's expression doesn't change, but his hand moves away from his sidearm. SMERSH credentials, real or fabricated, require verification at higher levels than a battalion major's authority. You look like you escaped from a camp. Mauthausen, 7 months. Sisoyev sways, catches himself. I need to speak with General Tolbukin or Marshal Konev now. You need a hospital. I need someone with the authority to contact Moscow. Sisoyev's voice hardens with an edge that cuts through his physical deterioration. The Germans have rockets that can strike targets 200 kilometers away. Volkov stares at him for 3 seconds. Then he turns to his aide. Get him in a vehicle. We're going to headquarters. The ride to 2nd Ukrainian Front headquarters in Bratislava takes 2 hours over roads churned to frozen mud by tank treads. Sisoyev sits in the back of a Willys Jeep, American-made, delivered through Lend-Lease, wrapped in a blanket that smells of diesel and tobacco. He doesn't sleep. He can't afford to sleep until the intelligence is delivered, recorded, transmitted up the chain to someone who can act on it. At headquarters, a converted school building with sandbags stacked around its perimeter and T-34 tanks dug into defensive positions, Sisoyev is brought before Colonel General Fyodor Tolbukin's Chief of Intelligence, Major General Sergei Shtermenko. Shtermenko is 42 years old, a veteran of the General Staff, and his desk is covered with maps showing the race toward Vienna and Berlin. He looks at Sisoyev, emaciated, frostbitten, dressed in stolen rags, and his expression reveals nothing. "Talk," Shtermenko says. Sisoyev talks. For 90 minutes, he delivers everything he witnessed in Mauthausen's underground complex. He describes the V2 rockets in technical detail: height, diameter, propellant types, the distinctive shape of the guidance section. He sketches diagrams from memory on Shtermenko's notepad: the rocket's cross-section, the fuel pump configuration, the mobile launch platform. He lists the names of German scientists, their specializations, the command structure of the weapons program. The prisoners called the tunnel complex Bergkristall, Sisoyev continues, his voice growing raw. Crystal Mountain. The Germans moved production underground in 1944 after Allied bombing destroyed the Peenemünde research facility. They're using slave labour. 20,000 prisoners, maybe more. The death rate is catastrophic, but production continues. 300 rockets per month at full capacity. Shtermenko's pencil moves across paper, taking notes in the abbreviated code of staff officers. And you saw these weapons operational. I saw them being assembled. I saw test firings, not at Mauthausen, but at a separate facility the engineers discussed, somewhere called Blizna in occupied Poland. The rockets are real, Comrade General. They're striking London. They're striking Antwerp. And if the Reich had developed them 2 years earlier, he doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't need to. The jet aircraft, components only, but the engineers were confident, spoke of production models already in combat. Messerschmitt 262, speeds exceeding 800 kilometers per hour. Our Yak 3S can't match that. Neither can the American Mustangs. Shtermenko sets down his pencil. Why should I believe you? You could be a German plant, a provocateur sent to misdirect our operations. Sisoyev reaches into the lining of his stolen coat, slowly, keeping his hands visible, and extracts a folded square of paper no larger than a playing card. It's a technical schematic, stolen from a waste bin in the Bergkristall complex, showing the V2's fuel injection system. The paper is stained with grease and blood, but the German technical annotations are clear. I'm not asking you to believe me, Sisoyev says quietly. I'm asking you to verify, send reconnaissance to these coordinates. He writes numbers on Shtermenko's pad, the location of the Mauthausen complex, the nearby Gusen subcamps, the rail lines that connect them to other facilities. Capture prisoners from the engineering units. They'll confirm everything. But do it quickly, Comrade General, because the Americans are coming from the west, and whoever captures these facilities first will own the future. Shtermenko studies the schematic. Then he picks up the telephone, connecting him to Moscow. Get me the General's staff, priority 1. Stalin receives the report on February 14th in his Kremlin office, delivered by NKVD Chief Lavrenti Beria, alongside GRU intelligence confirming parts of Sisoyev's account through separate sources. The General Secretary reads in silence, his pipe smoke curling toward the ceiling, his expression unreadable. German rockets, Stalin finally says. Jet aircraft, underground factories. He taps ash from his pipe. The fascists are more resourceful than we credited. The intelligence is credible, Comrade Stalin, Beria confirms. We've corroborated the existence of the V2 program through signals intercepts and prisoner interrogations. The British have been tracking rocket strikes on London since September. What we didn't know was the scale of underground production or the names of the scientific personnel. Stalin stands, walking to the map of Europe that dominates one wall. Red pins mark Soviet positions. Blue pins mark Anglo-American forces. The gap between them is shrinking daily as the Reich collapses. How far are we from these facilities? Mauthausen, 200 kilometers from current positions of the Second Ukrainian Front. Peenemünde, northern Germany, likely to fall to British or American forces. But there are other sites, research facilities, production centres, storage depots, and the scientists. Beria consults his notes. Von Braun and his team are reportedly at a facility called Mittelwerk in the Harz Mountains. That's within potential Soviet reach if we move quickly. Then we move quickly. Stalin returns to his desk. Issue orders to all front commanders. Priority targeting, German research facilities, rocket production sites, and scientific personnel. These scientists are to be captured alive and transported to Moscow. Equipment is to be seized intact. Documents, blueprints, prototypes, everything. If the Americans want this technology, they'll have to build it from scratch. And if the Germans destroy the facilities before we arrive, Stalin's smile is cold. Then we ensure they don't have time to destroy them. Advance faster, strike harder. The Americans are already hunting these scientists. Their intelligence services aren't blind. This becomes a race, Comrade Beria, a race we cannot afford to lose. Here, I will end the video. I will continue the story in part 2. Please like and subscribe for such content. Thanks for watching.